Tales of Tomorrow. Tales beyond human imagination until they happen. Tales of Tomorrow. Story number 3. Betelgeuse Bridge by William Senn. This is your host, O Mentor, saying hello for ABC. Today, we members of the human race, politely speaking, are taking ourselves for granted as the kings of the universe. But are we kings? I should like to tell you the tale of tomorrow from Galaxy Science Fiction magazine. It should make us wonder if actually perhaps there are creatures by somewhere compared to whom human intelligence is dwindling closer. Future time, two most strange and amazing bodies have landed upon Earth. Intelligence far superior to the keenest human genius. Betelgeuse Bridge.
The observation is tremendous. You would never think it possible for creatures of their forbidding appearance to be so completely gracious and charming. But while the official welcome is underway, speculation is high as to the civilization Anthony and they represent. Their home on a distant planet.
Well, can we say our mission has been successful?
So far only.
Oh, you look ready for the grave, Dick. Why don't you get lost for a couple of weeks and catch up on your rest?
I can't even afford a nervous breakdown. It'd be a lot more satisfying.
What's left to do?
I'll tell you better if you tell me what are these strange creatures after down here.
You really think they want something?
I don't know what to think. That's why I'm wearing bags under my eyes. Honey, I don't know about you, but I don't feel I can afford to sleep. You're probably wondering who I am and how I came to be mixed up in what we'll call La Terre Betelgeuse. So let me fill you in. We can start with that day when the alien spaceship landed outside of Baltimore. Makes you sick to think how we never tumbled, doesn't it? No more than a hop, skip, and a jet from the capital. Security was clamped down tighter than a mason's shop. Truthson, my old sociology prof, was ferried in by jet plane after the problem had become clear. He solved it for him without batting an eyelash. I was the answer. Within an hour, my entire staff and I were plucked out of our New York offices by the government agents and airmailed to a barley field near Baltimore. The field was alive with Washington grass, post sails flapping in the wind. Hey, so you finally got here. Finally? I couldn't even pack a two-step, Professor Truthson.
Time is important, my boy. Did anyone explain?
And something about a spaceship is all I... Is that it? That over there?
Doesn't look much like our notion of one, does it?
Spheroid. A Rococo spheroid.
And the curious thing is that there's not a sign of a rocket motor.
Any sign of life on it?
That's the really remarkable part. Come along, you'll have to meet our distinguished visitors.
How will they know what I'm saying?
We had Dr. Warbury out here. For your information, they learned English from him in 2 hours.
2 hours? What an IQ.
Superhuman. Get that, Dick, because it will be very important in what you have to do.
Uh-huh.
The best engineering minds this country can assemble are like a crowd of South Sea Islanders in comparison. These creatures belong to a galaxy-wide civilization. We're a backward hicks in an unfrequented corner of space that's to be opened up for exploration. Exploration, that is, if we measure up. Exploitation, probably, if we don't.
Where do they come from?
Betelgeuse. 9th planet of the star Betelgeuse. That's their home base.
I see.
Now, here's the plan. We're leaving the technical stuff to brains like Lopez and Minder. They're already going psychotic trying to locate a power source in that contraption.
I'll bet.
Your job is more immediate. You're the good impression part of the program.
What's the matter with our government land at it?
When you see our distinguished guests, you'll understand why this problem is completely different. It's as though they're coming out of the ship now. They're right in time. Yes, here they come.
Oh? Oh,
Yes.
why, they look like snails.
Human mollusks, if you like.
9 feet of slimy green trunk with a pink shell where the back should be. And those eyeballs
Waving around on the end of their stalks, I know.
positively ghastly. There's a picture where their mouths. Aside from those eye stalks, they've got no face.
The mouth is where their feet should be.
What?
You'll see it when they lift an edge of that wide base they stand on.
Such as this is impossible.
Now do you see where a public relations job comes in?
Monsters from outer space. That the kind of talk you're worried about?
Probably worse. Snails with superiority complexes. Dirty snails would be more likely. Remember your own reaction and think what it would be when whipped to mob hysteria by scare headlines.
Yeah, now I see why you wanted a public relations man.
We don't want them carrying stories back to their civilization of being shot at by a suspended fanatic. Or about somebody who screamed, "Go back where you came from, you foreign seafood." We want to give them the impression we're a fairly amiable, fairly intelligent race. That we can be dealt with reasonably well.
So they set up trading posts on this planet instead of garrisons. Yeah, I see what you mean.
Hold it. They've seen me when they're coming over to get acquainted.
What? They knew I was coming?
They know who everybody is. This is Mr. Dick Rose. He told you about it.
Glad to know you.
You, honored sir, are our touchstone, the link with all that is great in your noble race. Your attention is truly a tribute.
I'll do my best. Are you ambassadors, sort of, or explorers?
Our small work justifies no titles. Yet we are both. All communication is ambassadorship of a kind, and any seeker after knowledge is an explorer.
That's a foolish question.
My companion is what you would call the observer of our expedition. My own poor task is merely to act as our spokesman. You may depend upon our utmost obedience in anything you ask. We understand your awesome function, and we wish to be liked to whatever extent it is possible for such miserable creatures as ourselves. We place ourselves entirely in your hands.
Well, thanks. Thanks a lot. You can understand what a job I take. All those years of lurid magazine covers showing females menaced by assorted monstrosities, the horror movies, the invasion from outer space novels, the Sunday supplement sight flashes. All those sturdy psychological ruts I had to retract. The government offered me a month for the preparatory propaganda. At the end of the first week, I settled down with my secretary to check our schedule. And this will give you an idea of the magnitude of our little chore.
Here's the checklist and project chart you asked for, Dick.
We have to put a girl on the full time to keep up to date, Sandy. Take down these latest developments.
Right.
The scientific articles from Wilson's men have come in and are being sugared up here in the office. Magazine maps are being ripped apart and held open for them. They'll appear in the newsstands next week.
Did you persuade those magazines to...
Now, the government boys handle that, thank heaven.
What about the newspaper censorship?
Well, they had features on the wire yesterday describing humble creatures who create our gardens, snail racing, the spectacular new sport, and the basic unity of all living things.
And if the public doesn't like snails after this barrage, what more can you do?
Plenty. We're going to hit them on the head with a video show starting next Tuesday. It'll be carried on all major networks at the same time.
That sounds great.
Those two little snails are going to climb right into America's heart. The public will eat them up.
What are you calling them?
Andy and Dandy. Cute?
How can they miss?
We got 14 top writers collaborating on the script. Added to the video show is a comic strip. The movie's going to take a little longer, but there'll be a full-length Andy and Dandy cartoon playing every city across the country.
This campaign is genius, Mr. Rose. You're a genius. You realize there's never been anything like it in history.
May there never be anything like it again. We bombarded the public through every channel of communications open to us. We changed the centuries old prejudice against snails practically overnight. You can understand all this means for speed, of course. When the big announcement came, that had to be handled exactly right, or all our pro-snail propaganda would blow up on our faces. Handouts to the newspapers were carefully prepared, along with 10 suggested headlines. When release time came, even the Times was forced to shriek, Andy and Dandy blow in from Betelgeuse. And under that, a 4-column cut of Baby Ann Joyce whipped the snails. After that, the nicknames Andy and Dandy stuck. But while everything was progressing nicely on the outside, the picture behind the scenes was dark and gloomy. I flew down to Washington to check with Wilson, who was making his headquarters at the Pentagon.
Close the door, will you, Dick?
Oh, sure, Professor.
Now, I can talk frankly. Things are not going well, son.
Professor, nothing produced on Earth ever got such a warm reception as these characters are enjoying.
You ought to be congratulated.
Ah, stand it stuff. Pose them with the orange blossom queen. Pose them with Idaho potatoes and Milwaukee beer. Pose them laying a cornerstone. And by all means, pose them with some Hollywood starlets from Malibu Beach. Been working for years.
We certainly can't complain about their spirit of cooperation, at least their apparent cooperation.
Meaning what?
Look at that sheaf of notes.
The size is impressive.
The results of 4 months of questioning. 4 months of painstaking interrogation by trained sociologists. And we don't know as much about Betelgeuse 9 as we do about the social structure of Atlantis.
What's the matter? Want to talk?
They'll talk your ears off. It comes out like a good political speech where everything sounds wonderful and packed with importance. And then you find out there hasn't been a blessed thing said. Look here. Listen to this recording we made. Andy was asked if his government was a democracy. This is what he said.
A democracy is a rule of the people according to your rich etymology. We could not, in our lowly tongue, have expressed it so succinctly and movingly. One must govern himself, of course. The degree of governmental control on the individual must vary from individual to individual and in the individual from time to time.
That should be enough to give you an idea of what we're up against.
For 10 cents a word, that guy'd make a fortune. What about the technical department?
Mines, you mean?
Mines are in Vinci and Lopez. They're still hunting the power source in that spaceship, aren't they?
And not doing much better than I am.
Maybe Andy and Dandy don't think we're old enough to play with matches.
If that's true, why should they give us free run of their ship?
And again, on the other hand, why should they give us such pleasant and courteous answers, adding up to nothing?
They're such complex and artistically minded creatures, chock full of poetic sentiment and good manners, that it's impossible to get mathematical or verbal sense out of their talk.
Well, that spaceship should be some kind of clue to their civilization. Looks like one of those delicate jade carvings that took a lifetime to accomplish.
It goes with their highly polished manners. Basically, it's reminiscent of civilizations that have developed to the point of decay here on Earth.
Well, at least we're perfectly clear about what we want to know from them. And it still leaves the big question, Professor. What do they want from us?
I know. And if we can't learn anything about them, we're going to be in a sad bargaining position when we do find out what they want.
I'd say we'll be like the Indians who paddled out in their canoes to meet the first white man. Just about that naive. There were more immediate things to worry about. A debate was going on in the UN General Assembly, where America was being accused of importing extraterrestrial help to conquer the world. Every other country was clamoring for Andy and Dandy. We finally had to turn them over for a grand tour of the whole planet. It was the same thing abroad. They were all things to all people. In Russia, they delivered a ringing speech on the scientific validity of communism. In Bern, they lauded Switzerland as the mother of democracy and praised the capitalist system. And so it went. But the big shocker came when they got back to the States. They were hardly off the boat before Gibney grabbed them for Celebrity Salon, his evening TV show.
To appear on this star-studded ark are charming visitors from outer space, Andy and Dandy. And now, as usual, Andy, I suppose you'll act as spokesman.
That is the lowly task assigned to me.
Okay, then, we've got some questions I'm sure all the folks at home would like to ask you if they have the chance.
We're pleased, of course, to make ourselves as well known to your delightful countrymen as they would care to have us.
Thank you very much for your very clear answer. Andy, we'd like to know if you aren't just a little anxious to get home to the wife and children.
That is a very reasonable question, I am sure. But it's necessary to understand that we do not have a division of the sexes such as you know on this planet.
Well, at least you don't have to worry about your mother-in-law. But Andy, what ties do you have with your home planet?
Chiefly with the revitalizer, I should say.
Revitalizer? What's a revitalizer?
A machine. We must expose ourselves to it every decade or so. There is at least one revitalizer in each of our major cities.
And what does this do?
Very simply, the revitalizer generates cytoplasm in all animal cells and refreshes them.
They pause every decade that refreshes. So, what have you as a result?
You might say we have no fear of any degenerative disease. And by exposing ourselves to revitalizers at regular intervals, we quintuple our life expectancy. That is to say, we live 5 lifetimes instead of the one which should properly be our lot.
Yes, please be quiet and we'll continue the interview.
Newspaper extras in 52 languages. Radio and TV news flashes every 15 minutes. Lights burning late at night over at the UN headquarters. Andy and Dandy were requested to make a special appearance before the General Assembly the following day, and they accepted graciously, as usual. President Sadu conducted the interview in the Assembly before the representatives of all nations. We have asked our illustrious visitors from space to discuss the matter of revitalizers. Is there some reason, sir, why you have not brought up the matter before now?
To be perfectly truthful, it had not occurred to us, since the revitalizers are an everyday matter to us. We could not be aware that you would attach unusual significance.
Excuse me, it is of no matter. Not now. The important thing is that we must have revitalizers to rid ourselves of all disease and increase the span of life.
Unfortunately, our race does not manufacture these machines for export.
But you must now understand, sir, that they are of vital interest to us.
Undoubtedly, you richly deserve these life-giving mechanisms, but I can only repeat that none are available.
What would your people want? We will pay almost any price within the power of this entire planet.
I am stunned by the magnitude of your offer, but can think of nothing which would persuade our people to supply another planet.
Surely there must be something which we on Earth have to offer.
Excuse me if I may consult with my companion for a moment. We are embarrassed to think that our sluggish minds can conceive of nothing at the moment which would make an exchange possible. However, we are agreed that it would be advisable to consider further before closing the matter entirely.
You two agree to that?
It is the least we can do in return for the many kindnesses you have shown us during our visit.
Then please, sir, please do your very best to think of something. We must have those machines. President Sadu of the United Nations personally escorted Andy and Dandy back to their ship, which now sat in a restricted area in Central Park. Then the world chewed its fingernails for 6 days while the two snail men sat inside, presumably in solemn contemplation of the matter. On the 7th day, they emerged and immediately rushed before a special session of the General Assembly. Distinguished sirs, you have reached some conclusion in this matter.
It has finally occurred to my companion and me that a way may be open to an exchange.
You have only to name it.
Let me explain that our own planet is woefully in short supply where radioactive elements are concerned.
Yes.
Barren worlds containing radium, uranium, and thorium have been discovered and claimed by other races. Our own folk of Betelgeuse 9 are forbidden by our ethics to wage aggressive warfare for territorial aggrandizement. And we are therefore open to any peaceful means of obtaining these elements.
We have great amounts of radioactive oil.
We had also gained that impression.
Using it chiefly for manufacturing weapons and for biological research.
The military aspects are patently undesirable, and the revitalizers, of course, would make unnecessary the biological research. Therefore, if the contract appears a good one to you, we will agree to supply this planet with all of the revitalizers it requires in exchange for your radioactive ore. All of it.
Overnight, the United Nations became the central office of a planet-wide mining concern. A couple of generals here and there, a few nuclear physicists managed to raise fingers of warning before being pushed aside. Who really wanted war anyway? And as for subatomic research, how far could we not go if a man had 5 lifetimes instead of 1 to develop a series of experiments? Andy and Dandy departed for home to fulfill their end of the contract. And for 2 years, the world paid attention to nothing but the stripping of its pitch blende deposits. Andy and Dandy returned in cargo ships that seemed to cover the sky. Revitalizers were erected by busy, snail-like robots for every large city on Earth. Busier robots attacked the huge piles of pitch blankets with weird-looking machines. This time, Andy and Dandy left for good, taking their radioactive treasure with them, and leaving behind the huge, patient crowds waiting their turn at the revitalizers. Perhaps for the first time in our planet's history, there was universal hope and good cheer.
When will we have our turn at the revitalizer, Dick? I have some cold feet I'd like to get rid of.
Pick an age to come first, Sandra. A young girl like you'll be way down the line.
You realize that even at your present age, you'll be a youngster?
But I'm 40.
It still gives you 4.5 ordinary lifetimes to go. Isn't it wonderful to think about?
Yeah. Think how far a man could go in just one career if he devoted his entire 300 years to it.
Tell me, what will you do with those extra lives of yours?
I've been thinking about all the books I'll have time to read. All the books I'll have time to write. And marriage.
Hmm?
And somehow I never found time for it. But with another 250 years to go.
Really?
I'm not making any offers yet. First, let's see if these revitalizers really work. 6 months after Andy and Dandy departed into the skies, the revitalizers quit dead, stopped working.
Are you sure, Professor Tracy?
Ask any doctor. Look at your death rate.
But why? Did we do something wrong?
We did something wrong, all right. We trusted.
The boys from Betelgeuse? They done us wrong.
We made the same mistake all peoples made when they met a superior civilization. Mainzer and Lopez have taken apart one of the revitalizer motor units. There was just a trace of it left. But this time they found the power source. My boy, the revitalizers run on the fuel of completely pure radioactive elements.
No, that's not believable.
Surely a race like that would have developed a power that was more economical.
They never bothered. And they wanted our uranium to fuel their own revitalizers.
You're saying, in effect, that everything they did here on Earth was carefully planned to swindle us. Professor, they could have conquered us with their superior science.
They couldn't have conquered us. They wouldn't have tried. Not because of their ethics, but because they hadn't the energy or the concentration. They're a decadent and dying race. Andy and Dandy are probably among the few remaining who have enough get up and go to even trick backward people.
And me, that guy who did the most colossal public relations job of all time, I was a #1 sucker.
Think of me, the sociologist. I'm supposed to recognize the symptoms, and they were all there. The lack of interest in their own culture, the involved methods of thought and expression, the exaggerated etiquette, even their spaceship. If we had a tenth of their scientific knowledge, what substitutes we wouldn't have developed by now? You understand?
What hicks we are. We've been sold the Brooklyn Bridge by some dressed-up sharpies from Betelgeuse.
By a pair of sneak thief heirs of what was once a great race.
With our atomic power stolen, will we ever have space travel?
Oh, gone down the drain, sold for a mess of potty.
I'm not so sure, Dick.
Well, we get to the moon on methane and alcohol. You call that space travel?
I'm thinking in terms of a starship, same as you. Travel to distant galaxies. Yes, by George, even to Betelgeuse. Those simpering snails never thought we'd get off this planet, but we will. And when we do, bet your life we'll collect some tolls on that Brooklyn Bridge they sold us.
But how, Professor? How?
I don't know yet. But we've got physicists who've been splitting the atom from the very first experiment. Mark my words, we'll have space travel and to Betelgeuse.
Well, I suppose some good will come from this affair. The nations of the world showed we could all work together.
Yes, it's possible the world government will come out of that effort. Still, it's hard to forgive a swindle.
Professor, is it generally known that the revitalizers have stopped?
No, it's not.
Well, what's going to happen when the people find out? Won't there be a bad reaction?
Now we get down to the purpose of my visit, Dick.
You mean this wasn't just a friendly call?
No. I've been sent by the government, Dick. They're acutely aware of the reaction when the people learn the truth about the revitalizers. And you have been appointed to do a public relations job to prepare our good citizens for the shock.
All right, I'll do it in one condition. That if and when you ever go to Betelgeuse, I go with you.
That's it. Betelgeuse Bridge by William Penn.
Thanks to Galaxy, that wonderful science fiction magazine, now in the stand. Next week, another extraordinary tale of tomorrow out of Galaxy Science Fiction magazine called The Other Now by Mary Leinster. About a fellow whose wife faithfully continued making written entries in her diary after she had died in a car accident. This is your host, O Mentor, saying, until next week, take your time before someone else does.
Tales of Tomorrow. Heard in tonight's play were Lon Clark as Dick, John Gibson as Andy, John Stanley as Tosin, and Raymond Edward Johnson as your host. Music was composed and conducted by Bobby Christian. Script adaptation by Don Whitty. Produced by ABC in association with George Foley and directed by Clark Andrews. This is Dorian St. George speaking.